welcome to a mini lesson on 3 common mistakes when writing essays. So, I find that kids continually make these 3 mistakes. 1, stating the argument too soon. If you state your argument too soon, you might make a reader mad and they won't want to read your paper. 2, you might incorrectly format your quote. This happens all the time. I want to remind you that this essay is open note. So, use your notes. There's no reason that you should incorrectly format your quote. And 3, your commentary sometimes is incomplete. Let's talk about how to avoid each of these 3 mistakes so you don't make them on your paper. The first mistake that you can make is stating your argument too soon. So if you remember the club sandwich argument, we have an upside down triangle. Your paper starts with your truism. That is a broad statement about the world. So if your thesis down here is about motivation and the motivations of the Central High students in Warriors Don't Cry, then your broad statement is actually just going to be about motivations or violent acts in general. So you don't state your argument here. You don't even talk about the book here. The next one, let's zoom in a little bit, is the topic sentence. Here, you just mention the title of the book and the author. So, if you do that, and you make kind of a broad statement about the book, you'll be fine, but you don't want to state your argument yet. Then you might want to give some evidence in your setup. You preview that evidence, and here and only here do you talk about your argument. And basically, from then on, you're allowed to talk about your argument the whole time in your body paragraph. This is fair game. And then in your conclusion paragraph, you restate the thesis with the title and author again. Don't forget about that. Review the evidence, and you make a broad statement. This is where you don't talk about your argument or your book at all. You just talk about a broad, meaningful statement that your reader can take with them. So here is where you would talk about motivation in general and what people can do to control their motivations. I will print out this club sandwich argument sheet onto your OneNote under argument so you may use it on your test. Remember, guys, when you use the title and the author and the restatement of the thesis and the topic sentence, we always italicize it. So that is tiny, but we need to italicize it. And as you can see, I didn't capitalize. So it's capitalized and italicized, okay? You guys know that. Do it in your paper. The next mistake is formatting quotes. I'm not going to talk about this for long because this is in your notes, okay? I will print this page to your notes as well. Under argument, you always go in the text it says, we put a comma here. Then you have your quotation marks. I never knew how to format the quote. And then parentheses, just the page number and the period here. The only time you will ever have punctuation inside the quote is if it's a question mark or an exclamation, okay? You need to think that your sentence starts here. It doesn't start inside the quote. So, you will always need to have a period at the end, very end of what you're saying and the page number, because this whole thing is the sentence. Not just this. You have put this quote inside your own sentence by adding your own introduction. I have 2 types of ways to introduce something. I can give some context here, but I always use a comma. These are in your notes. All right, the third and final mistake is always incomplete commentary. So, commentary is always bumped into 2 parts. We have context. That's when you say what's going on in the quote, what's happening. You get the reader situated. You remind them of the scene in the book. And then you have related to the thesis. Okay, so you have to give context and you have to relate back to your thesis. Don't let your reader do the guesswork here. It is your job to explain your argument, not the reader's job to figure it out. So here, some students wrote a commentary for this thesis. Melba continues at Central High despite the horrible acts of violence because she wants to prove that integration is possible. So, she says so by commenting to the reporter. Okay, so we already know when she's saying this. Maybe we can give a little bit more information about who's the reporter, where are they? So maybe we could add commenting to the reporter during a press conference about her time at Little Rock. That would be a fine piece of context. And then they also give context here. Melba continues at Central High despite all that happens to her. Remind the reader about all the horrible things that happen. Even though Melba experiences a lot of hate and discrimination, she was glad to be a part of integration. Because she knows that at some point the process will get better. Okay, so she wants to prove that integration is possible here. That's part of her thesis, so I'm already starting to talk about it. Then they use a wonderful example comparison. For example, running sprints in PE feels miserable in the moment. However, it benefits us in the long term because it prepares us for our games and it makes us better athletes. We need an S there. Makes us better athletes. Like integration, see that? Running sprints is miserable in the moment, but in the long run it only benefits us to make sure that we can benefits us to make us the best we can be. So we need a little editing here. Benefits us. Okay. Well, we could edit that sentence a little bit by doing this. Making us the best we can be. Melba is going to Central High to help her people become the best that they can be and strive for equality. She wants to prove it's possible. So, here we go. I've added one more sentence just to prove the point. But they did a really good job anyways. But what you need is context and relating to the thesis. Sometimes you guys only relate to the thesis. Sometimes you guys only give context. Sometimes you start to relate to the thesis, but you don't quite finish it. If you're ever in doubt, add another sentence. Really explain what you mean. So, 3 common mistakes when writing essays. Stating the argument too soon. Check your notes and make sure you are only stating your argument in your thesis statement, and then start not stating your argument in your conclusion paragraph once you get to the review of evidence. 2, incorrect quote formatting. This is simple, just detailed skill. Use your notes. It's open note. You got this. And incomplete commentary. If you're ever in doubt, add one more sentence. Add one more clause. Really explain what you mean. Okay, you guys are going to do wonderfully. Rewatch this video if you'd like, but remember that these 3 pages, this page, this page, this page, and this page, is going to be in your OneNote.